Okay, welcome back to Virtually Writing with Scott Hauge and Jamie Engel. And we're going to continue talking about 3 different ways you can approach your story writing. We've already talked about research, and now we're going to talk about winging it. Winging it is the best way to describe the way I write. I get a story idea and I just sit down and write it. I do maybe a little bit of planning, but like I mentioned in a previous segment, my characters tend to take on a life of their own and they move on into the story and they take the lead and I'm just there trying to write down everything they're doing.
Yep.
So, have you ever wung it, Jamie?
Yeah, my first few books, I was a winger. I did Clifton Chase and Dreadlands completely just, I have no idea what's happening. And it was really fun. I remember a moment in Dreadlands Wolf Moon where the boy and the girl are down at the lake and there's a wolf shifter that shows up and they defeat it and it runs off and then the girl goes, "What about your sister?" So the boy's running back to camp and he pulls away this like hanging vines to the tree where she was sort of like sick and waiting on them, and she was gone. And I remember dropping my pen and being like, "Oh my God, what happened to her?" And I had to go like with the main character and go find her. So I think there's something very organic and fun that happens when you are winging it because the story really does write itself. And that's what Stephen King says he does. He says he comes up with a situation and he throws some characters in and he just writes how they get out of it, which is pretty mean.
That's one of the key exciting points about winging it is, as the writer, when you're winging it, you're almost as surprised about where your story goes as your readers are going to be.
Right.
Your story develops a life of its own. It gets you in there writing. It gets you pen on paper or fingers on keys, and you can just roll with the story.
Yeah.
And then, as the author, you get to deal with surprises when the sister disappears,
We found
when
her.
your main character starts having dreams that allow her to speak alien languages, as happened in my story,
Yay.
or whatever happens, and then you have to deal with the repercussions of that, which is one of the cons of writing. If you're not prepared
Yeah.
to deal with disappearing sisters
Right.
or characters who are speaking in alien languages, you have to sit down and figure out what's going on with this scene. Why
Yeah.
is this happening? What does it mean? And how does it affect the rest of my story?
Right.
Which, for me, is what makes story writing exciting. It's tackling a mystery. Oh, this has happened.
Right.
Wow, I didn't expect that. How do I get out of that?
Right.
How do we
And,
get out of
and I'd say a couple of the other cons are if you do lose momentum, if life happens and you step away from the story, sometimes it's very difficult to get back into it because you aren't in the same frame of mind. Whereas if you had the research or you had the outline, you could kind of look back at that and go, "Oh yeah, that's what's coming next."
And that leads us to a good place for a little writing tip. When you walk away from your story, always leave with a bit of the story to come in your mind, because that gives you the seed for when you come back to sit down to pick up that story. Okay,
Right.
I remember the character's sister disappeared and everyone was in a panic. And then
Now
somebody
what?
said, "Now what?"
And you can jot those down like at the end of the chapter, or if you stop in the middle of the chapter and you can write, "Don't forget next scene, blah, blah, blah." And you can give yourself notes for, if life happens. I think the other con too for writing without having an outline and just kind of winging it, I think more people hit writer's block
Yes.
because you don't know that muddle in the middle. You know the beginning, you know the end, you're not quite sure how to get there. And I think a lot of people, that's where they hit their writer's block, and it's mostly just because they haven't finished developing the story. They started writing before they developed it, which is fine. But that's just a con. You might hit writer's block, or it might be more difficult.
And make no mistake, writer's block is a danger no matter which methods of these writing you're doing, but it's definitely a stronger danger when you're winging it or pantsing it
Right.
or just making the story up as you go along. So, what happens if you run into writer's block, Jamie?
Well, a couple things. Some of my ways of dealing with writer's block is either I go on to something else and just let the story simmer. I think about it. I walk my dog. And sometimes it takes weeks or months. And then the idea will just come to me. Or I will sit down and outline the rest. Because there's, like we said earlier with the research, same thing. You can start as a winger or a pantser and then go, okay, I don't know what happens anymore, and you can stop and outline from there, you know.
Another thing you can do if you find you're being faced with writer's block is to just keep writing. Even if it's not part of your story that you're writing, just keep writing, and either you'll fall back into your story or you'll get the blocking material out of your head. But whatever you do, just keep writing, because that's what it's all about. Writing. And if you can't work through the writer's block, maybe you'll come up with the material for a new story.
Oh my gosh!